We live in a constantly changing world, but one thing that we've been able to count on as Brits for the last 61 years is that The Archers is on at 7, and if you missed that, again at 2 the following day. We met with 4 of the wonderful women of The Archers at the WOW Festival this year. Here they are. You have been the editor of The Archers
I have,
for over 20 years.
I know. It's frightening to think that, really, because it creeps up on you. You know, it's a job I enjoy, and so I seem to be here a long time. Yes.
And as a woman, that puts you in a very powerful position.
Yeah, in a way it does. But you're a conductor. You conduct 10 or 12 writers every month, and of course they're also powerful and interesting. And so my job is really one of sort of tossing in ideas, but very much blending and selecting the ideas of other people as well. So yes, it's run democratically and organically, if you'll excuse the agricultural pun, but it's organic. But at the end of the day, the buck does stop with me, and if there's a kind of an on pass, yes, I break through it and I say, come on, let's go there, let's do that with the storyline. So it's an interesting power. It's not a kind of isolationist power. It's not a kind of dictatorship. Yeah.
Well, I was also very glad to hear that our licensing fees are being used very responsibly. One of the things that that there's very strict guidelines for your writers.
Yes,
in terms of how many actors they can use.
Yes, financial guidelines, absolutely. I mean, they have to be creative within constraints because we have budgets like everybody else. It's your money, the public's money. They can be very creative though, because, for example, if you're allowed 6 or 7 actors per episode, if you want an episode with a party in it and say you want 10 or 12 actors, that's fine. But then you've got to have an episode which has only got sort of 4 actors or 5 in order that you hit a target at the end of every week.
So you're here at the WOW Festival,
yeah.
And one of the points was, is The Archers feminist? And you said no.
Because we can't be an issue. If thereby lies bad drama. If you start with an issue. There's an awful lot of strong women in it, and I'm sure there's an awful lot of feminists in it and around the table. And, I think I'm probably a feminist, but I've met some lovely men who are feminists too, so it's an attitude of mind, that, isn't it?
But it's also reflective of society.
Yeah, it's reflective of society, and there's all sorts of things. We are agriculturalists. Some stories we can end up being, through our characters, being sexist.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the drama. It depends what we're doing at any one time.
Hello, I'm Pat Gallimore, plays Pat Archer.
On the longest running serial, The Archers.
Yes, indeed.
What are the things that people are talking, because you've played Pat Archer for 39 years.
I have, yes.
Fantastic. Great gig. How do you separate Pat's life from your life? It's sort of like living in a parallel universe.
Well, it is, but don't forget, we do actually only record 6 days out of a month, and so you go away and you live your life, and then you come back and next week we're recording. So, for the next few days I'm putting on my Pat Archer dungarees and wellies, and I'm Pat Archer in the studio. But it's what we do, and as I said, because Gillian asked me, the length of our contract, we are contracted by the episode. So we all go away and do other things. We have to do other work. We have families. We have our own. That's my real daughter and my real husband.
Oh, wonderful!
And so yes, it's we do live a parallel life, I suppose. Yes.
Well, your husband seems much less whiny than Tony.
Oh yes. And she's much less neurotic than Helen.
Mary Cutler.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Donna from Radio Gorgeous.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
So you've been a writer on The Archers for...
Yes, 34 years.
34 years.
Yes, that's
Great
right.
gig.
Yes, it is indeed.
You talk to the audience about the process that the writers go through, and it's a very consensual, democratic, discussed and debated and considered process. And then you go off and you get to do it to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a wonderful combination of the two, because you can often have, I don't feel I'm particularly strong on plot. I've done some good ones. But if we start a plot off, sometimes I can have some good ideas for it. And that's the exciting thing about working together, that we all do it together. And I actually think that's why it's lasted for such a long time. It's because so many creative people have had an input into it. It's not just a question of, as we said, the actors give so much, and the writers and the production team as well. And so you get this very rich blend of things, I think.
If pot isn't your gig, you're apparently the widowmaker. You killed Nigel.
I did kill Nigel, yeah, but as I
And
said,
several
it was
others.
Yes, I think I wrote Mark's funeral as well. You're right about the widows. Yes, I did.
Do the men get nervous when they see you coming? Oh no, Mary wrote this episode. I'm a goner.
Oh, I never thought about that. No, I don't think they do. No, I don't think they do. No.
I won't ask you to give us any tidbits of things coming up, because obviously you know what's happening, because this is planned, as you were saying, 3 months in advance or years in advance.
Absolutely. No, I'm not allowed to. I kind of sign a sort of official Archer's Secrets Act. But actually, people, they think they want to know, but they don't.
No.
And I think the listeners I've often had this experience where that people will say, oh, I know where you're going with this story, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And I'm like, no, those would have been really good ideas.
I wish I'd talked to you a while ago.
Exactly.
Where were you 3 months ago when you needed this?
But actually, we're not doing that. And I think that's part of the pleasure. They kind of make their own little arches up as it goes along. Yes.
I am speaking with Felicity Finch. For those who don't know, she plays Ruth Archer on The Archers. We're here at the WOW Festival, and you're part of the Archer Charabang to the WOW Festival. And the question was asked to the panel whether, the Archers has any relationship to feminism. And the editor said no.
Well, I mean, I don't quite know what the answer meant. I think it's because it came fairly late in the session, and there wasn't time to go into it in great detail. But, I think The Archers has got a variety, a real cross-section of women in it, as life does. It reflects life. It reflects the women you would find in a village, in the UK.
Anywhere Ambridge.
Yeah, anywhere Ambridge, absolutely. I think that there are several very strong women in Ambridge, and Ruth, I think, is one of them. The interesting thing about The Archers is that people are not going to, the writers and the production team are not going to create a character saying this character is going to be the greatest. Well, they could actually. I'm telling a lie here. They could decide that a character is going to be a feminist. And in fact, Cat Archer, who we heard from today, was originally brought in as a very strong-minded, political, inverted commas, politically minded woman. But the other women, including Ruth, talking about my own character, I would say, even though I don't think it's ever the word feminist I have never uttered, that in no way means that Ruth is not a feminist. In fact, the opposite. Ruth is a feminist.
Yes.
In practice. In practice. So we're not judging on whether those conversations happen. If you're reflecting life, then there are women in Ambridge who are feminists. No doubt about it. I have a great friend in Ambridge, Usha. She's a feminist. I would say a lot of the women are. Some of them might quibble about using somebody like what's her name, Jennifer Aldridge. She might say, "No, I don't know about using that name."
Yeah.
But her actions are of a feminist. So it's like life. I think it's ridiculous actually to say no, it's got nothing to do with feminism. What I would say is that there are lots of strong women there, but that's not when you're creating characters. You're not saying is she a feminist woman. You're creating real people.
You were speaking just now as Ruth, my friend Usha. And how must that be? It's like having a parallel life.
Well, I think as an actor, you're playing lots of different characters. So that putting on the coat of the character is a normal thing to be able to do. But, if a life of a play could be 2 months, or it could be a year if you're touring with a play. With The Archers, you're right, it is something different because it's a weird thing, because you're growing over the years with the character. You're getting older, the character's getting older. You know, in my case, Ruth got married, Ruth has got 3 children, I'm not married and I don't have any children. And, you know, sometimes I call them my surrogate family. But I think really the overall answer is that it is a privilege to play a character for years and years and years.
And the writers have helped you develop that character, but you've had such input into Ruth's character as well.
Yeah, I think what happens is that when I first joined the programme, you can see what sort of a character they are initially creating. Mm-hmm. So you're finding those parts of yourself. You know, she's a very strong, determined, feisty, and for many years she probably would be a bit over-direct, which I'd say I'm probably not. So you're kind of pushing to find the character within yourself. Let's put it like that. But there was something you just said about... I think another aspect that's interesting is that when Ruth had breast cancer in 2000, it was in 2000, that was a sort of mellowing of the character in some ways, because then
some of that brashness.
That life and death thing. You know, that I think that she kind of would then take things a little bit more easily in terms of not getting so aerated about things. And quite often when David loses it, Ruth would be the voice of calm now. Yes. And I think that is a legacy from something as huge as that happening in your life. I mean, I feel it's an amazing thing to be able to. I mean, that whole storyline. I talked to women who had breast cancer about their experiences. 3 women I spoke to at the beginning, and every time I got scripts each month, I would talk to them about their experiences at that point in the process. So, a huge responsibility. All you want to do is to be believable, to be truthful, to find that within yourself. And also there is an element in a story like that of it being educational, which isn't why the story's done at all. No story in the Archers now, it started off as an education programme years ago for farmers, but that ceased decades ago.
Yeah, that was the original mission.
Yeah, but in order to remain relevant to listeners, it's dealing with the big things that happen to us in everyday life, but also the research that goes into any storyline, be it the breast cancer storyline, be it the rape that Kathy went through, be it anorexia, be it depression, be it the Down syndrome story at the moment. You know, all of the research that goes into it to make sure that they're completely accurate, and anything medical will be prescription. So, you know, it's a very strong and reliable process, and so as an actor you can believe everything you're saying that's right.
Felicity Finch, who plays Ruth Archer, explained to me how the Archers model reformed attitudes towards radio in Rwanda and helped the healing process post-Civil War.
One of the things that came up, doing education through entertainment, was something that you've been involved in bringing these sort of daily serial type stories to other countries, Rwanda, Afghanistan. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the launch of the radio soap in Rwanda back in 1998, and the extraordinary thing about that was that the radio was used as a propaganda tool during the genocide, and on one of the stations, Radio Mil Colleen it was called, they would actually be putting out propaganda messages saying kill a cockroach today, and a cockroach was a Tutsi, and they would give the names and the addresses of people that should be killed. So radio was a medium that was mistrusted. I mean, almost 1 million people, or up to 1 million, the number is not precise, but it's always quite been up to 1 million people who were killed during the genocide, most of them Tutsis and some moderate Hutus. So radio was incredibly mistrusted at that time, 4 years on from the genocide in '94. So the team making the programme were taking on a huge project in it. It was a huge undertaking to try to get a radio drama, a radio soap on air, and using the Archers as its model. But they started it, and it's become incredibly successful. It's still going to this day, and it's used to get across important information, never telling the listener what to do, just creating strong stories, strong characters, and the listener's left to make up their own mind about issues to do with health, to do with maybe domestic violence, to do with property disputes, to do with, even now, they're dealing with very sensitive stories to do with incest, even, which was not recognised as existing in Rwandan society, and child abuse and those kinds of issues. So these are all, very strong. There is a young student called Agnes who every April she goes through a trauma, which that is the anniversary of the genocide, the start of the genocide. And for that to happen, that character was able a few years ago to come into being. They would never have been able to do that at the beginning, to even mention the genocide and anything else connected to it. So she is reflecting what happens to many people across the country, that they go through a month of trauma still at that time. So it's incredibly powerful, but it also has humour in it, of course. It has to, in order to appear.
It has to be. Yeah.
So they have their very own. They have a character called Bushombi, who's a cross between Linda Snell and Eddie Grundy, if you can imagine. So it's the village gossip, the village gossip, and the lovable rogue all rolled into one. And and he's a wonderful character. And they also
don't tell him a secret.
No, don't tell him a secret. And they have conventions in villages across the country where actors and writers and producers will be, and they can attract as many as 10,000 people. So that's but millions listening to it.
And it just shows an example of, if you run into this is one way of dealing with it. It's sort of showing by example.
Well, people can choose that different characters in a storyline will be giving different views, but it will be clear which is, not without telling people what to do, which is a more positive outcome of the story. Yeah. So it will be clear which probably is the way to go. So it's about people deciding that they will change attitudes, change behaviour. There are several of these programmes across the world for which the Archers has been the model. I mean, another one that I've visited and trained actors and directors on and made documentaries about, as I have about the Rwandan one, is in Afghanistan. There is a radio show called New Home, New Life, which has been going since 1993, I think it is. It was originally made in Peshawar by Afghan refugees. So some of the artistic intelligentsia from the university who fled at that time, with the help of BBC Media Action, previously called World Service Trust, BBC World Service Trust, actually set up that programme back then. And then when the Taliban were ousted from Afghanistan in 2002, they all moved lock, stock and barrel back to Kabul. So that's where it's been since then. And again, they have really strong stories, really strong characters that the audience, the listeners really interact with. And again, to do with really serious problems that are going on in people's lives, reflecting people's lives, but also they have comic characters and a character that was an older guy who could never find a wife, and eventually, and women were getting in contact with the program saying, you can have my daughters, or another woman, or he couldn't find the right outfit for his wedding, and women were sending in materials saying, we'll make your wedding outfit for you. And when a character died because the actual actor was emigrating to Australia, there were cards sent in and people mourned for the death of condolence cards. It's a very, very strong programme. It's amazing to see these programmes in action and to record programmes about them and to talk to the actors in them. And in somewhere like Afghanistan, women can't. It's still very much disapproved of by many of the men in society, for women's faces to be seen on television or in theatre. And although some do brave that, you will find female newsreaders. So it's a big problem. But radio, because their faces aren't seen, it can be but not in all families. I mean, I met actresses who would say, okay, their immediate family's okay, but their in-laws who live out in the countryside have no idea that that is what they're doing.
But at least it is something that they can do and keep hidden.
Yes, to a certain extent. Yeah, to a certain extent. So it's tremendously interesting working with the actors, working with the directors, and it's been a privilege to have an involvement with these programs. Yeah, well, I would like to actually get to the point where I could go to a place and actually do that. Because you'll always have your stock characters. There'll always be the Jill Archer, the Phil Archer family. There'll always be the Linda Snell character. I mean, there are certain stereotypes.
Lillian is everywhere.
Yeah. There will always be certain characters that you'll start off with, but they'll be Afghan style or Rwandan style, or instead of having You know, in Ambridge you've got the pub and the village shop. I mean, you wouldn't have a pub in Afghanistan, but you might have the water pub where people gather and meet. You've always got to have somewhere where people
the market.
So, you know,
finding that universal.
Yes, so it's been an incredible thing to have this connection with these programs, and I feel passionate about how amazing they've been for the societies and transforming people's lives, indeed saving lives in these countries has been amazing.
Well, and also in finding, because nationalism can be such a negative. And I think, with the Archers, in terms of nationalism, it's a benign nationalism.
It is, but I mean, there was a debate recently where I can't remember the details. We're talking about the fact that why doesn't politics ever come into the Archers? I mean, I think the thing is that politics will come in with a small p. It's very clear that the Aldridges will probably vote Tory, and it's pretty clear that Pat Archers with the organic farm will be the Guardian leading Labour voters. And who would be the Lib Dems? Well, who knows? Maybe Brookfield Farm. I don't know. But it's interesting what you can and can't bring in. Well, not what you're allowed and not allowed, but what in order for something to work year in, year out, that there are certain areas that you have to be wary of. But you still have to keep the truth of these things.
Again, but it's reflective.
I don't
think actually in most people's lives, rightly or wrongly, that they talk about politics as much as perhaps they should.
Yeah, I think that is a good point, and I think that things like at the moment to do with dairy herd management, that there's going to be a huge dairy being built. I mean, if you had a political situation, that's it. Yeah. And Ruth is very much against that. And the Aldridge lot are involved in that, so they're very much for it. And there were many, kind of meetings about that.
Yeah.
So although we're not saying those were political meetings with a big P, they were certainly political meetings because the whole subject is political.
Yeah.
So I think that happens all the time in the Archers. You have the Grundys, who are quite a poor family. So, you have food banks coming into the Archers, so you have that sense that a family are not being able to make ends meet, and it's really affecting, they've moved back in with their parents, particularly two of the younger characters in it, have moved back in with their parents. So, all the time you've got, politics is to do with feminism too. You've got Alice Archer, as I referred to, as the young engineer that is hoping to get a great job, all of the jobs she's got, and what that brings up with her relationship, and whether you stay in the family village where you have strong connections, whether you take risks and go to another country. All these things are political in their own way, aren't they?
Yeah, in the same way they were talking about feminism, like it's not mentioned, but it's there. And politics is not mentioned, but it's there we see it in action.
Yeah.